This is all about matters of mindset and how we can utilize our mindset to its capacity. And we can also play around with our mindset in a healthy manner and to help one another out and to be more productive and have productive lives and be productive in society. And today's topics are phrases that hold people back.
But first, we're going to travel back in time to last week's show and revisit a couple of the topics from last week's show. Last week we started speaking, we covered quite in depth actually, we covered phrases like what if and how, and we were saying that the difference between the what if and the how was the fact that the what if can easily be taken in a negative way, and a lot of people fall by the wayside by using phrases like what if, and they start looking on the dark side and getting all downtrodden and doom and gloom and despondent. And what I was trying to say last week, and I think Mario was agreeing with me, was that it's not necessarily about, well, it is about the words and the phrases that we use, but it's the direction that we're taking these phrases and these words in. We can use the what if to say, what if I can do this? What if there is a better way? What if I can enjoy this? So as much as language is a vital piece, and these phrases do get used in a negative way, I just wanted to put out there that they can also be used in the right direction.
Absolutely, absolutely. It goes in reverse as well. Let's talk about how it can be used in the negative. Okay, let's take rock climbing, for example. Let's say, for argument's sake, you and I are rock climbing. All right? And we keep saying, what if, we keep repeating in our mind, either out loud or in our mind, what if I fall? What if I fall? What if I fall? What if I fall? Now, you see how easily that by saying that, I'm creating some anxiety, right? And the likelihood of falling is probably very great. Okay? Now, the same thing would hold true is if I was shaving myself and I say, what if I cut myself? What if I cut myself? What if I cut myself? You can see the likelihood of that would be very high.
Yep.
Okay, now, we also want to understand that when you say those kind of words, that's not you're not confident in the process, right? Which is okay because you're afraid, right? People are afraid. People are afraid, but you can see how language can affect confidence and how confidence can affect our language as well. Now, where it starts to cascade the what if is, what if I fall? What if I break all my bones? And what if no one is able to find me? Compounding debilitation. Debilitating yourself with those phrases, and you're compounding it because each statement is reinforcing the previous.
Yeah.
You see that?
Yeah, definitely.
So it's very simple. Now, the same thing holds true. What if I cut myself? Well, what if I hit a main artery? Or what if I scar myself? And now, what if everybody notices at the party?
I'm just a little bit concerned. I'm thinking, well, what if I drop the razor while I'm climbing this mountain? What if I fall and smash my bones and there's a brand new razor there that nobody's going to get the use out of? What's going on?
Right. Well, you should know not to shave and mountain climb at the same time. Right? Let's talk about how we can use it in the positive. So tell me what your input is. I want to hear what you have to say.
I'm in total agreement there. The emotions will affect the words that we use as much as the words we use will have an impact on the emotions there. And if we're in a bad place, anyway, to use the example of climbing up the mountain, it's human nature. I mean, we're hardwired to try to protect ourselves, to move away from pain towards the pleasure. So let's get safely up this mountain, but let's say, for example, we're looking down, could very easily trigger the thought, what if I do fall? And what if, and I can see how that would sort of expound exponentially. My perspective still has to be playing devil's advocate here, that before we start to climb the mountain, as we're looking up thinking, well, what if I fall? Because it's pretty high as we look up there, right to the top of that mountain. Now, if we was to say to ourselves, like as a preemptive strike on the subconscious there, and say, what if I can get all the way up to the top faster than I did last time? Or what if I get all the way up to the top, and as I'm looking down, I'm noticing all these people trying to come up, they're following the same pathway that we've taken, and saying, come on guys, giving them that mental encouragement.
Right. Here's another way to look at it. What if I breathe and control my breathing as I'm climbing?
Yes.
Or what if I focus on each step slowly?
Yes, I like that.
Okay, so this is what I mean by slow progression, right? Sometimes moving too fast is not good, right?
Yeah.
Slowing down. What if I'm more mindful with each movement?
I like that.
Right? So mindful in terms of, when you hear mindful, the word just means mindful. It means you just have the ability to stop, take a moment to just think about it, right? So this is how it's used in the rock climbing. Now, in terms of, shaving, what if I let the razor just do its job and I take my time?
Yes, in the moment. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
What if I take my sweet time and I focus on each movement very slowly?
Yes, love it. Absolutely love it.
Right? So, these are just things to kind of get us out of that, because we all know that what if puts you kind of in the future, but we can use that to our advantage. That's the what if. We discussed it in the positive and negative. Anything else you'd like to add to that?
No, I think that's great. It's nice that we're able to come together on this podcast and give the people out there some little mind hacks.
Yeah, mind hacks. When we hear mind hack, it's kind of like coming up with ways to think more positive and to kind of program ourselves for success and happiness in our life, and that's all we want for the audience out there.
It is
to really grab these things. We just want people to benefit. We want the people around us to benefit. I mean, we are habit coaches, so if you do want to reach out to us, we have that good old email that we'll relieve, at the end of the show. We'll let that out of the bag. So with this why, right? So we already know that why is a loop question. And if I say, why am I so fat? I will look in the refrigerator for that chocolate cake and tell myself that's why. So whenever you say, why am I so fat? What we will do is look in our reality, find ways to reinforce it and to make that feeling and belief even stronger, right? So now, how can we use it in a positive, right? We can use it in the positive by being imaginative, all right? So in other words, you have to use your imagination a little bit, right? The imagination is important. And imagination is what really helps our mind. It really does. Using our imagination is important. Being grounded is important too, but using our imagination is equally important. So if I were to say, well, why do I use this razor gracefully? That sounds silly the way I just put it, but that you can see that I might start to notice myself doing it very slowly and gracefully as a result. But that's okay. A loop question is really what it is. And we're coming from the cerebral psychology aspect of things, which is going to be helpful when you want to have evidence in your reality for certain things.
I like to look at it like, without the why, we've got no reason for doing anything. Everything we do is for the why. It's for the pleasure we're going to get. It's for the pain that we're going to move away from. Why am I doing this? I'm doing this because it's going to improve my life. It's going to help other people. I mean, why are we doing this podcast? Because we've both studied the mind for longer than either of us could probably care to remember. So we're doing this in a bid to help people. This is what I was saying earlier on about, the whole structure of language. It can be used in a positive way. It can be used in a negative way. My grandma used to say there's a place for everything and everything in its place. And the why in the right place, when we're looking for reasons to do something, why we're going to climb the mountain. We're going to climb the mountain because it's going to benefit us. We're going to get the excitement. We're going to get the thrill of getting to the top.
So you're using it in reference to purpose discovery, using it as a way to discover. I love that. I think that's really profound. When I'm using it in the form of a question. The question may sound strange, but it's really there to be repetitious and allow you to look and maybe find evidence in your reality. With you, I love it. Because what you're doing is you're allowing people to have a purpose to doing something or why they are doing something. And Purpose is everything.
It is. This is why I wanted to revisit. The purpose of what I was trying to say was language. It can be used in so many different ways. A lot of people will use the why when they're having a discussion maybe with a partner and saying, well, why did you do this? And of course, when somebody approaches you with that, why did you do that? Of course, you're on the defensive. You're going to start temperature rising. These maybe a few harsher words start to flow out. So when we're asking the question of somebody, why did you? It's totally different to asking, why am I going to do this? It's the direction that we're taking these phrases and these words in.
Now, phrases that hold people back. What Colin and I decided to do was take a look at some common phrases that people use. I call them stops. They're stop phrases or phrases that are debilitating. These phrases are not of benefit, but we're going to look at them, each one, and we're kind of going to give you both of our feelings about it, and we're going to deconstruct it. Let's start with the first one, Colin. What's the first one?
The first one is, it's too late.
I feel it's too late. When we have that phrase, we're coming from a point of permanence. We often look at our problems in life and we make them very permanent. So if it's too late, right? Now, there are times where in reality, this could be used for real. For example, I tried to get to the train and it's too late. I was a minute late, and that's kind of it there, right? But when we use this in terms of development, when you get someone who's 50 years old and they say it's too late to go to school, I'm sorry, I'm going to 1,000% disagree with that. I don't care how old you are, you can go to school at any time. This is a stop. You're pulling out a stop by saying it's too late. I can't go to school at 55. Sure you can. Absolutely you can. It's just we're looking at life as we're running out of time and it's permanent. Our life is permanent the way it is and it's not going to change and so on. So when we use this in terms of the train, positive, no problem, understandable. When we use this in terms of our development, it's a stop. You're pulling out the stops and you're trying to stop yourself from taking a chance that you'd like to take, or you're afraid to take a chance that you'd like to take. So it's too late is a phrase that creates permanence. So what's your thoughts on that?
Well, my thoughts, to be fair, when I read the document and was working through it, and I'm looking at it thinking it's too late. And of course, my passion is language. And I'm looking at it thinking it's too late. It's too late for what? Who's saying it's too late? Is there a deadline? I mean, you mentioned the one about the train. You've got to the train too late. But is the deadline fixed? Is it fixed in stone, or is it up for negotiation? Could we have called ahead and said, look, I'm running late, can you hold the train? I think when we can limit ourselves, as you say, we can limit ourselves by the words that we use. So, sometimes it's a little bit about getting a little bit more clarity on the job.
Well, what if I was a guy that said, okay, I'm 45, and I say, Colin, it's too late to go to college. What's your response? How would you respond to that?
What time do they close?
I love it. Now, that was a complete pattern interrupt. You completely interrupted my pattern. That was fantastic. You also made me think about it. Love it. I love it. I love it. That was so good. Thank you so much. That was great.
My
Absolutely. Pleasure. So I see what you did there. It's brilliant. Absolutely. What else would you say to that? What's another thing you would possibly say to the excuse of, we're going to call these an excuse or a stop, right?
Okay.
It's too late. Well, what else would you say to that?
Okay, it's too late at 4 to 3 to go to college. Okay, realistically. What's the driving force behind this? Why are you saying it's too late? Are you afraid that you're going to be quote, the oldest swinger in town? Is it that you believe that you're not going to be able to study as well as the other people there? There has to be a driving force. It's a case of finding out what's causing them to put the brakes on themselves. It's like they got their foot on the accelerator and the brakes at the same time. They got their, going to college, I want to improve myself, got the foot on the accelerator, the revs are coming up, but the foot's on the brake. Yeah.
Absolutely. So it seems like your approach is probing to get to the deeper reason of why do you feel that way, right? All right, let's move on to the next one. What is the next one?
The next one is, well, I wouldn't know where to start.
Oh, I love this one. Another excuse or stop that people pull out, right? I wouldn't know where to start. Right. If you say I wouldn't know where to start, and I say, well, if you did know, what do you think it would be? So what I'm trying to do is get them to imagine and getting them to process possibility.
Yep.
Rather than get stuck. Now, if they pull out the good old I don't know, and I always say, well, if you did know, what do you think it would be?
Yep.
So now, I'm pushing back, but I'm pushing back on that possibility, getting them to think a little bit more. And usually they come out with an answer eventually.
Yeah, because
they come out with a solid answer.
I've used this one myself countless times, to be fair. I've even used that with my children. I don't know where this is, but if you did know. It causes people to go back internal. It causes them to actually question the limiting part of what they've said. It's opening up possibility. Everything we do around the whole language structure is about creating a way to open that possibility. That's the only way anybody's going to move forward.
Now, if someone said it to you, I wouldn't know where to start. What would be your...
Well, the first thing I'll be thinking, somebody comes to me and says, look, Cole, I wouldn't know where to start. And I'd say, well, who would know where to start? Maybe you could go to ask somebody. There's got to be somebody that would know. And another one, I don't know where to start. Well, why wouldn't you know where to start? Have you attempted to find out what the steps are? How important is it to do or have this thing? Where might the steps be accessible? Who might know what the steps are?
Another one that is really good when it's saying, I wouldn't know where to start. I would say, well, how do you know where to start unless you try somewhere?
Yeah.
Right? That would be to take a stab at it, to try something new. And that's because they're afraid of the uncertainty. That would show that they're afraid of the uncertainty. Right? Anything else that you'd like to add to that before we move on to the next one?
Whenever I'm working with language structure, I like to use the phrase, the cat sat on the mat. In every sentence, in every interaction, there's going to be a subject, an object, and a verb. So, when somebody comes to me with, I wouldn't know where to start, we've got I for a start. Okay, so if you wouldn't know where to start, who would? I wouldn't know.
Love it.
Why wouldn't you know? Okay, I wouldn't know. But what if you did? I wouldn't know where to start. Well, where might the start be? I wouldn't know where to start. So what could the steps be?
I love that.
Yeah.
Love it. We both have such unique sides of things. It's wonderful how we bring it to the table and serve it up like a meal. Let's go on to the next one. What's the next one we have?
Oh, I like the next one. You can't have your cake and eat it too.
I love this. You can't have your cake and eat it too. Well, I've heard people say, what's the point of having it if you can't eat it? I've heard people come up with a retort with that. This is usually telling people that you're not allowed to have two things. You can't have one or the other, right?
Yeah.
This phrase might serve its purpose, but who says we're talking about cake, right? If we're talking about money, let's say, it's like, well, we're not talking about cake. We're talking about $10,000. That phrase can be easily utilized or leveraged when you say we're not talking about cake.
Yeah,
right?
It's a metaphor,
because it's not a this or that. That just allows you to kind of get it and get the conversation in a different direction.
Yeah.
Because why? Cake is a metaphor. Don't you agree?
Yes.
It's a metaphor. So the way to get out of the metaphor is to say we're not talking about cake. We're not talking about a metaphor here. We're not talking about just a picture. So some people will use metaphors to their advantage. And you got to remember, we have a tendency to use metaphors, and this has metaphors. What would you say to this whole thing? Give me your whole feedback with this. Like, how would you say this?
No, there's a question. You can't have your cake and eat it. As I say, I normally try and take it apart. So what sort of cake is it? Is it a nice cream one, or is it one of those Battenbergs? Oh, I could just eat the whole Battenberg. But really, what does that actually mean? As we've said, it's a metaphor. Okay, so we sometimes swap like touchy situations, something that's going to have too much emotional content. When we swap it over and depersonalize it, it makes it so much easier to deal with. So to use this example, you can't have your cake and eat it too. So the cake represents something else. So does it actually stand true if you swap it back and say, okay, so what do you mean you can't have your cake and eat it? You want a faithful wife and a mistress?
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, it could be in reference to something like that, where that is like, that is,
I'm just go with me.
Strong like scenario that sometimes this phrase is used in, but it's also used now. Cake is to be understood as it's used as a metaphor when we speak about substance.
It is, and that's where I'm leading to. So somebody says you can't have your cake and eat it. So it could be relating. Some guy comes in and says, look, I want to have a faithful wife, but I want to have a mistress too. So who's to say you can't have your cake and eat it? What if you could? What if you married a woman that didn't mind you having a mistress? How would that be? So that's handled that side of it. I mean, we use the cake as a metaphor, as we keep saying. So what if it was to represent money? What we're saying here is you can't spend your money and save it at the same time. This is one of those phrases that I find useful that have been passed down generation to generation. And I think a lot of this stuff is because at the heart of every family, they want their children to do better than they did. So when they're coming out with some of these self-development phrases, I call them, and this is an ideal one. Can't have your cake and eat it too. Things can't be in the same place at the same time. They can't be in the bank and in the cash machine.
Right. And absolutely. Another way to leverage that is you should be eating instead of thinking about cake. Okay. Yeah. You should be eating instead of thinking about cake at this point. So that just means that there's something more important that should be thought of.
You got to prioritize. I think this is what this one's saying.
Correct.
You have to prioritize.
That is absolutely right. Perfect.
I'm just trying to picture the scenario where I go down to the bank and try and withdraw a cake. It's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. All right. That's very good. What's the next one we have on the list?
The next one is, I like this one as well. I'm not the type to be self-motivated.
I'm not the type to be self-motivated. My response to that is, okay, well, what type are you? Yeah. Or what does a type have to be to become self-motivated?
Yeah.
What about you?
Well, I'm looking at it thinking, I'm not the type to be self-motivated. So we've got a not in there for a start. So we're in denial. We're saying that there's no possibility. By saying I am not, you've drawn a line in the sand. That's it. It's fixed in stone. I'm not the type. Mm-hmm. So let's look at the type. As you've rightly said, there's a type. What does that type look like? Are you sure you're not the type? Okay, so I'm not the type to be self-motivated. Self-motivation comes in many forms. It could be as simple as listening to an audio track. So realistically, if you're not the type to be self-motivated, if you can't just press the play button on an MP3 player or on some kind of audio machine, then I think you're stretching a point by saying that you're not the type. I think maybe you are, you're just not recognizing that. I'm not the type to be self-motivated. Whatever. Can you motivate yourself to relax?
I would probably say, what do you think makes up the type what do you think makes up the type of people that are self-motivated? Yes. This way we can analyze the qualities for that and get to a helpful place with people. Right. So I think that's very important.
Cool.
All right. How do you feel on that one? Feel settled, sorted?
Yeah. Oh, I'm settled. I'm sorted. I'm laid back. I'm not laid back. I'm horizontal. Yeah, it's all good.
All right, let's take a look at the next one then.
I'm a procrastinator. I like this one.
So where I'm is short for I am, which is connected to the identity. Using the letter I is connecting to the identity. So this is very attached to the identity, and it's very strong when you say the I'm. And it's attached to that person. But what we can understand is that a person is always developing, shaping, changing, and forming. So with that being said, I'm a procrastinator, yes, and developing, and you're developing your sense of organization. So it's okay to learn something new.
Yeah. Life isn't static. Life is always moving in some way, shape, or form. If we're not growing, we're diminishing. I'm a procrastinator. Obviously, there's not a lot of room for scope with that one. You've already mentioned the fact that, okay, so I am a procrastinator. Identity level statement there. I am this. So it's set in stone. What if you're not? Okay, you're a procrastinator. This is what you're telling me. But what, in all things? All the time? Do you ever procrastinate about resting? I'm a procrastinator. Well, I can't be bothered to answer that question. There's so many different ways you can interrupt people's patterns, so many ways you can get them to step out and reanalyze what they're actually saying. Sometimes we'll just say these things automatically. We open our mouths and our brain falls out. But sometimes when we just sit back and say to them, why do you say you're a procrastinator? Where's the evidence for this? Have you ever not procrastinated? Is it something that you've been able to get yourself to do?
Absolutely. Here's an example, right? Here's a fun way of doing it.
Yeah.
Go ahead and say that same phrase to me.
Mario, I'm a procrastinator.
Yep. Geez, I thought you were British. That was a pattern.
I saw what you did. Yeah, I saw what you did.
Using humor to get you to understand that you are more than just a label. Hey, British, means like you're way more than just that. I like to say that it's pointing out the idea that you are way more than just one word.
Oh, yes.
So that's kind of leaning towards a bigger space and a bigger way of thinking.
I've never been so abused. I'm English. I'm not British.
Forgive me.
Not a problem.
I'm just an American.
Just. We need one of these phrases that's got the word just in it. I love the word just. Okay.
Just.
So let's move on to the next one. Oh, this is a good one. I have too many responsibilities.
Okay, then where are you putting some of those responsibilities?
In the bank with the cake. I have too many responsibilities. This can be approached from so many different directions. I'm trying to keep a straight face. Humour's good, but it's all this tea that I've been drinking. Too much sugar. I've got a bit of a hypo on. Okay, so I have too many other responsibilities. So that's going to be used in a situation where, let's say, person B has asked person A to do something extra. So if person A's got too many other responsibilities, they've obviously made the point that other responsibilities. So what are the other things that you're responsible for? Would you take the opportunity to delegate some of them if the opportunity came along? Who says it's too many? What too many as in regards to what? As in regards to who? What's your take on it?
My take on that, when people say I have too many responsibility, I say, where are you putting your values? Because where you're putting your values is controlling where you're putting your responsibilities, right? So if my value is buying drugs illegally, it sounds crazy, but buying drugs illegally, then I have the responsibility to rob, steal, and do other things that are negative just to reach that point, just to kind of get those drugs that I need. So I'd like to say that responsibilities are connected to values, right? So when we have our values spread out, and what I mean by spread out, when we have too many values in this array, okay, what do I mean? It's like we value food, we value money, we value living, we value connection, relationship, right?
Yeah.
When we spread our values out too much, we become very unhappy. Very unhappy. It becomes a recipe for putting your mind in 50 places and taking away the responsibilities for where they should be in certain parts of the life, or at least could be, I should say. So when we spread out our values, we have too many responsibilities. So it's like, okay, I have too many responsibilities. Okay, where are you putting your values? Is there something in your list of responsibilities that could be discarded or shifted in a different way? For example, gaming, being a gamer, right? Being a gamer can be productive and non-productive. Playing video games can be productive and non-productive. It can be productive when you're a beta tester or alpha tester and you work for a company and you have a desire to become a programmer, right? But it could also be fun and exciting and great when you're a gamer. However, if you put 90% of your energy in that basket, in that area, and then you say, well, I have too many other responsibilities, it means a person could make excuses. They could exclude the important things and choose things in their circle that keeps them distracted. In other words, they're making an excuse for escapism, to escape, right? So I'm not saying that gaming is bad. I'm simply saying too much of anything is not good, right?
Yeah.
So gaming is good. It can be very good. It can be productive in the terms of business, going down the road. And it can be fun and exciting. It can also be an escape, right? But it could also be too much of an escape. Or it could be something that dominates your time. And because it dominates your time, it's because you have a high value with it. And if that person wonders why life is not fun or not good or not happy or not productive, it's probably because they're putting too much energy on one thing that they value, or too many things. I should say, rather, too many things. They're splitting their energy across 50 responsibilities.
Yep.
And this is a recipe to be unhappy. It really is.
It is. And it ties in nicely to the whole, having your cake and eat it. There's only so many hours in the day. Those values is just another way of saying these things are important to me. So it's a question of prioritizing, what are my important things? What is going to give me a more fulfilled life? And I think that's half the trouble, because a lot of people, they're trying to, as you say, put all their eggs in one basket and use all their time up to get what's going to give them the biggest payoff. Let's be fair. If you ask a child to tidy the bedroom or to go and play on the Xbox, he's going to go and play on the Xbox. So sometimes it's a case of acknowledging the fact that life isn't 100% about enjoyment, being in that enjoyment phase. But we've all got things that we have to do that we don't necessarily relish doing. If we can make those enjoyable and tie them into our values.
I'd like to say that there's core values, core things that are connected. The most important things, like to me, valuing food and when it comes to money, for example, there's that big argument of, oh, well, money isn't everything. I'm like, yeah, but it's right up there with oxygen, and that's the famous Les Brown quote. And you know what? He's right. I give him total credit. It's right up there with oxygen.
It is.
You need it to buy food. You need it for certain things. And we live in a society where money is there. The intention behind money is really what's most important. Money itself is neutral. With that being said, it's your intention behind it that is really the same thing. Same thing with a weapon and a gun, let's say. A gun on a table is neutral and just completely neutral. But then put it in the hands of someone with negative intention, and now that's changed. Put it in the hands of someone who has the intention to protect somebody else. Well, that's also has changed, right?
Yep.
So what we can understand with that is that it's very intention-based. Electricity is also any tool that we use in society. It is the ultimate operator error when you have bad intentions.
Yeah. I've just got to say that I love Les Brown to bits. I've got so much of his material.
Love him to death. He's
I do.
So powerful man. Powerful words.
He came from such a lowly beginning. So I've got nothing but admiration for the guy, apart from the fact that he stole that oxygen thing from Zig Ziglar. He did. He stole it from Ziglar.
They borrow, steal, whatever we want to call it. Let's look at it this way. There's a lot of truths out there. And I learned this from one of the martial art instructors I studied under. He said this, and I will never forget it for the rest of my life. Truth is truth, and it doesn't matter who says it as long as it's true.
Yeah, just keep talking, buddy. I'm writing this down.
Right?
I like that.
Absolutely. Truth is truth, and it doesn't matter who says it as long as it's true. When we see a truth like that, it becomes a universal truth, which means it can apply to pretty much everybody. Universal meaning everyone, right?
Got it.
So a universal benefit for the greater good of humanity and the greater good of other people. And when we talk about martial arts, we talk about, there's certain techniques that will work 100% at a time.
Yep.
Those are considered in the chaos of combat. They become a truth. They become a functional truth, if you will, something that is scientifically usable every single time, right?
Yeah.
So that's something I just wanted to bring out there. Right? So what was the next phrase that we have, and then we'll wrap up that one.
Right. The next phrase, it does say, I should be farther along by now. I'm assuming that it means further.
Right,
yeah.
I should be further along. This is a state of frustration. This phrase is a state of frustration. What do I mean by that? It just means that at this point, they're looking at the future, but then kind of comparing it to where they are right now. So this is often a statement. This comes up when people start to compare, right?
Yep.
So if you grab somebody who's 55 years old and he's working a job where he's just sweeping in a factory. He's 55 years old sweeping in a factory. And then he looks at someone else that's 55 years old. And that person has a yacht and a car and all these other things. And he might say, wow, look at the guy. I should be further along by now. I should be where he is. So this is really when we start to compare. Everybody has their own journey. And that guy doesn't have the same journey as you. So when people say, I should be further along, well, what makes you think that? It's really just the best friend. What makes you think that? Because not everybody has the same journey. That person has a different journey than you. Okay, how would you like to get a little further? That's another thing. How can I, or how could you, or how would you like to get a little further? Let's talk about how we can.
Yeah, how can I? There's that phrase again.
So what's your thoughts?
Pretty much the same. They're always going to be, because we're on the same page. I shall be further along by now. Okay, so where would you like to be? Where would you prefer to be? You know, are you expecting too much of yourself by saying that you should be further along? Because let's be fair, Mary, I mean, you know this. The only reason anybody can experience any kind of discomfort, any kind of disappointment, is because what's going on in the outside world isn't tallying in with our expectations that we've got inside our heads. We've got an idea of what's fair. We've got an idea of what it is that we want. We've got an idea of where it is that we're going. And of course, when something crops up that doesn't allow that to take place, that is when the disillusionment kicks in. That's when the excuses start coming in. That's when the self-berating starts to come to the fore. So I should be farther along by now. You could make the guy feel better by saying, you know, well, one way to look at it would be that at least you've made some kind of progress. If you should be further along. So you've obviously come some way to be able to say in that utterance, you know, I should be further along. So, as you rightly said, you know, who are they judging the progress against? We're all walking our own individual paths. So, yeah, I think we've basically covered that one. Love it.
Absolutely. Another way to put it is, how do you spend your time? Or how are you spending your energy?
Yes, that's a good one. You said earlier on something about money but not being that important, but it's a close second to oxygen. I mean, you think about it, when you look at life, life is all about making sure that you look after your health. To do that, you need finances in place. You need to be healthy enough to bring the finances in. You need to bring the finances in to look after your health.
Absolutely. There are certain things that must happen in priority to the other. For example, I had a friend that was almost homeless at one point in her life. She was almost homeless. And, you know, here she was, and she had to pay off all these bills that she had, but then also find a place to live.
Right.
So it's like you had to pay your bills, but you also had to find a place to live.
Yeah.
Right. So I told her, I was like, you're just going to have to keep on looking until you get something. And eventually she did. She got something. She actually landed the new place. Right. But here was my advice to her. Right now, your phone is your priority. Yeah. And she says, well, I thought my house is my priority. I said, yes, but your phone is a communication tool because you can pay bills with it and get emails and surf the internet and do research.
Yeah.
So if you cut that off, if you don't pay that bill and that bill goes out the window, I was like, you better have something in place. So my next piece of advice for her was have a P.O. box. I said, you need a P.O. box, a box at the post office where you can get your bills. Right?
Yeah.
So by having a mailing address, that's another way to pay the bills.
Yes.
And not cut yourself off from your own good. So what I'm basically trying to say, when a person is that down on their luck, the two things that they can't afford to lose is, one, a mailing address. A P.O. box is going to be important because that's where your bills will go. That will allow you that if the phone goes down, you still have the ability to kind of maybe, send some bills out via mail. So the phone and the P.O. box, to me, are lifelines of communication to actually manage those bills in the outside world so you can have enough time to get the place you live. Another thing, too, is that the cell phone is going to be used to find and call for apartments. I mean, that's the reality. You got to use this phone to call for apartments. So when we talk about priority, it's like the money, then the phone, and, of course, you got food, right?
Yeah.
So now the values, we have to understand the value of this phone. Because why? It's helping her get another place to live. It's helping her get another job. And the post office box is having that mailing address so that when people say, well, where do you live? Well, here's my post office box. You know, right now I'm in between apartments. I didn't say I'm homeless. I said I'm in between apartments. I'm looking for a second place to live. And this is my P.O. box as of right now.
Sofa
Doesn't
surfing.
mean people will often get very down on themselves and say, well, I don't have a place to live,
Yeah.
But you're in between. In between means you're in between. And you are. It's just a different way of saying it.
Yeah, sofa surfing.
So Right. So I'd like to say that when it comes to values, we have to be really careful in dire situations. We have to understand that the phone is a resource. The internet is a resource, right? Money is a resource. Food is necessary. It's a necessity. So we have to learn how to become resourceful and balance resources wisely. And that's my overall point of what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, so I get it, the whole thing about the resources. I mean, I like to look at everything as a resource. I like the way you've worded it, though, and put about the priorities and the necessities.
Just brings us back to a good point of that language allows us as human beings to stay resourceful in the worst times.
Yes.
Okay? Because let's face it, things do happen. Hurricanes happen. Cars break down, right?
Yep.
Divorces occur.
Yep.
These things occur. So becoming resourceful in the worst situation is really important. Not only managing physical resources, but managing the inner resources. Your feelings on the inside, what your values are, managing pretty much all of those resources on the inside of who you are, right? And staying strong no matter what.
I was going to use the word
rising
optimistic,
above,
but staying strong works. But yeah, as long as we can keep that optimism there. I mean, we've got to, it's funny enough, the next one says, if I get my hopes up, blah, blah, blah. But just to tap into that, if you haven't got hope, what have you got? You've got nothing. You've got to keep that hope there. So the next one, it says...
hope is something to be fueled.
Yes.
That's what I want to say.
Hope springs eternal.
Hope is something to be fueled. We have to fuel that. And it's okay to have hope, but it's also okay to be grounded to the ground and understanding resources. I'd like to say that it is the balance between, I'm saying, keeping positive and keeping that hope, but also managing the resources of what you do have. So it's kind of like I'd like to say it's a mental balance between being optimistic and resourceful.
Yeah, I think hope is sort of heading towards possibility.
Correct.
Hope is heading towards possibility. So I like to say it's another close cousin. So yeah, if I get my hopes up, there's that just I said I knew we was going to have a just. If I get my hopes up, I'll just be disappointed. See, the thing is, you may get disappointed even if you don't get your hopes up. So wouldn't it be nicer just to enjoy the anticipation? What if you're disappointed and it actually works out? Then that would be a perfectly good waste of a good disappointment.
Well, I'd like to say hopelessness and helplessness are learned.
Yes, they are. 1,000%.
They are learned processes.
1,000%.
Right? Helplessness, to be helpless is something learned. And hopelessness is also a learned. And a lot of times, hopelessness can cause even depression. People are getting depressed. It's also a strong predictor of suicide. Okay, it's very dangerous, topic here. It's like, so we have hope and we have false hope, right? Well, I like to say that, false hope can kind of occur when a person doesn't really manage their resources, right? What do I mean by that? It means that you got to make sure you're putting your hopes in places that are balanced with your actions and the resources in which you have. So I like to say you leverage your resources, you leverage those things, you leverage, you have that hope, and you're going to go in that direction as best as you can.
Yeah.
So I would like to say is that the more we leverage our resources in both inside and outside of us, and then we kind of keep that hope, plus we keep moving in that direction, we keep forward momentum. That's the key, forward momentum, because to do nothing is a cause set in motion. Tony Robbins says that at best. To do nothing is a cause set in motion.
Of course it is.
To do something is a cause set in motion.
Yeah.
We just have to strongly determine that what we do is going to take us in a new direction. And this is where resources are super important. External resources and internal resources are very, very important.
Yeah, we spend our lives building relationships because we want the resources. We spend our lives going to work because we want the resources. Everything we do is for the resource. Everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And absolutely, what does a person hope for out of their own life? And when they say nothing, when people say nothing, well, I have nothing to hope for. Well, that's kind of like a sign of becoming apathetic, right? So, there's good, real, there's hope, and then it's realistic hope, and then there's false hope.
False hope.
There's false hope as well. And I'd like to say that hope really is a good thing. Okay. I'd like, they said it the best in Shawshank Redemption. Hope is a good thing and maybe the best of things, and no good thing ever dies, really, right? And that was just kind of like when things are hard, things are difficult. Like, what are you going to do? Why does hope matter?
Well,
right?
because without hope,
why does sustaining hope matter?
Because without hope, you're going nowhere. If you don't believe that something's possible, that there is light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak, then you're not going to walk down that tunnel. And you talk about false hope. Sometimes, see, we're back to the whole word thing again. I think sometimes when somebody's really down and out, I think sometimes even though we use the word false hope, if we don't give them something to hope for, sometimes false hope's got to be better than no hope. At least it's going to get them to create some forward movement. If they've got the possibility in their mind, they're going to be coming from a more resourceful mindset, and they're going to try and dig themselves out. If somebody's stuck in some quicksand and they're not going to get out, you've got to be saying to them, look, you can do this, keep going. Because who knows, it may not be false hope, it may be an actual reality. It may be against the odds, but it may be reality.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. I like to think about it of this, is that helplessness and hopelessness are learned, and so is despair. And also dejection. These are things that are learned. We have learned helplessness. We have learned hopelessness, okay? Hope is an optimistic state, and it's often mental expansion. Whenever you're being hopeful, you're mentally trying to expand to the possibilities of what exists. You're having an expectation of the positive outcomes that, or that are there, right? You have an expectation of positive outcomes. But we have to also understand that there's positive outcomes, but then also there's events and circumstances. So this is where we have to be resourceful, because we have to leverage events and we have to leverage circumstances, both inside and outside. How we interpret those events, how we interpret those expectations, and the actual events and circumstances that are outside of us.
Yes.
And that's all I got to say about that.
That's great. I mean, it's the successful people that have learnt this, and it's the people that are struggling to be successful that haven't picked up on it. It's always going to be about managing your weaknesses and developing your strengths.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I like to say that hope is a pathway, also direction, because it's going to become your North Star for the direction that you're gonna go, right? But let's face it, you can't just have hope and hope alone. You have to have some work. I like to say hope and effort is good. Yes. And you have to have that sense of instigating change to achieve the goals and go down these paths is very important.
Oh yeah, because order and movement are the things that are going to lead to growth. Without the order in place, without that hope, without the action, you're going nowhere. And just to round this off nicely, we talk about learned helplessness and learned hopelessness. Everything's learned. Yep. Even confidence is learned. It's almost like confidence could be a skill. It can be developed, it can be honed, it can be improved, it can be learned. So,
absolutely. I like to say that we are growing, shaping, changing. We are a constant. We are not a finished piece of work. We are not finite. Okay? I wouldn't say I'm Mario. I say I'm Mario-ing, because it always reminds me that I'm developing, shaping, growing, and I'm learning. And that's
Mario,
so important.
Yeah, you're a star. You're a star. You're regrouping on what we said last week about when we say I am, all we can actually say in effect is I am being. I am being Mario. I'm not Mario. I am being Mario. I'm not Colin. I'm being Colin.
Absolutely. We're going to continue this list for next week, which I think would be good. We'll continue this list and then maybe revisit some other topics as well. But I think this was a great show today. Today was really great.
I enjoyed it.
We covered a great deal of stuff, but we also opened up people's minds to certain ideas. We hope that this show benefited you. We are not psychologists by any means, we're coaches, so feel free to ask us if you need help.
I'd just like to reiterate, as Mario said, drop us an email, whether it's help with habits or help with just basic goal setting, some accountability that you want there. mattersofmindset@gmail.com.
Thank you very much.